morning, everybody. We are going back to question number 8, 10, and 12 of Who Am I that we have read and we are rereading so that we become clear before we go forward. By popular demand. So let's go and look at question number 8. So question number 8. What is the nature of the mind? And I decided to read it with your permission, all of you. I'm just going to read it if that's okay with you. What is called mind is a wondrous power residing in the self. It causes all thoughts. There is no such thing as mind. Therefore, thought is the nature of mind. Apart from thoughts, there is no independent entity called the world. Apart from thoughts, there is no independent entity called the world. In deep sleep, there are no thoughts, and there is no world. In the state of waking and dream, there are thoughts and there is a world also. Just as the spider emits the thread of the web out of itself, again withdraws it into itself, likewise the mind projects the world out of itself and again resolves it into itself. When the mind comes out of the self, the world appears. When the mind comes out away from the self, the world appears. Therefore, when the world appears to be real, the self does not appear. And when the self appears, shines, the world does not appear. When one persistently inquires into the nature of the mind will end, leaving the self as the residue. What is referred to as the self is the Atman, the soul. The mind always exists only in dependence on something gross. It cannot stay alone. It is the mind that is called the subtle body or the soul, the jiva. We're going to take a pause at question number 8. We are going to go back to one line. A question was raised in question number 8. There's a line which says, which has been highlighted, apart from thought, there is no such thing as the mind. No, I'm sorry. Apart from thoughts, there is no independent entity called the world. So the question was how to explain that a little bit or to try and absorb it. And there's nobody to explain to anybody else, so let's all absorb it together. Apart from thoughts, there is no independent entity called the world. Just as my world, which is my sphere of my circle, my near ones, my closest ones, not only just in other human bodies such as a wife or a husband or a son or a daughter or a partner, but other than that, all my forms, my philosophy, my religion, my success, my definitions, everything about me, my definitions, is my world. Agreed? There's no other world other than that. When we begin to describe ourselves, we begin to describe ourselves with the attributes which is not me, which is attached to me because of whatever I define myself with. Whether I call myself a doctor, or I call myself a ditch digger, or I call myself the biggest, most successful politician, or I call myself poor or rich, or a good person or not so good a person, etc. All are definitions of my mind. If we are clear about it, then it is very easy to understand that there is no world other than my mind. So the question then may come up as to then what should I make of this ocean and these mountains and this car and these roads and my building and my house and my company, my job and my bank balance and my fixed deposit and my gold and my this and that. Everything. Right? That would come up, right? Well, do they exist without your attaching or us attaching to it? Does it exist for someone else who doesn't know what I'm made of? Nobody knows it. I don't know about others. So all my definitions are creating a world of my own. And therefore, if there is no thought about me being attached to it, or these things belonging to me, the world will not be there. My world will not exist, just as it would not exist the moment I breathe my last. Very simple and clear, right? The moment I die, my world comes to a complete halt right then and there. It does not exist after that. My world that existed 20 years back, or 5 years back, or 50 years back, depending upon our age, does not exist now. There are incidents that happened that troubled me so much that at that particular time I thought I was going to die, I couldn't have handled it, or I was so jubilant about something I thought now this was the ultimate, I would never have any iota of a problem ever. And yet I did. And I have forgotten those times. And all that is going to play when I'm about to die. All that is going to play. The entire movie is going to play on the screen, the mental screen. But not digressing, my world exists because of my thoughts. Supposing I'm a very successful neurosurgeon and have performed many surgeries and have contributed to many lives being saved. And suddenly I get a stroke. And let's create the character that this neurosurgeon is only 44 years, 45 years old, and has been so successful ever since he was 30 that the whole world meaning the city in which he is, his hospital is, where he publishes his papers. He's a clinician and a researcher. So he's not only just a doctor working out of an office or a hospital, he's beyond that. And he gets a stroke, which he couldn't have controlled, and loses the mental faculty to be able to cognize things as he used to, and comes back after about a month or 6 weeks, and now he can't perform any surgery, and he does not even know when asked or when talked to as to what are you really talking about. He cannot comprehend anymore because he himself had a stroke. The world has come to a halt for him. That world that existed for him came to a halt. A different world has now come up to him, and he says, I am handicapped. Oh, I used to be very good, but now I can't. That world for him has changed. And depending upon his own spiritual strength, depending upon his own spiritual wealth, either he would be depressed about it, especially if he's not spiritual, he's going to be depressed about it. And he's going to lament that situation. Why did God do this to me? And the one who's spiritually mature would slowly and steadily recover from it and would be able to see his own jiva, his own body, his own existence, his own definition of his own world, separate and apart from this body, because he would say, I couldn't control it. Now I'm not that. Just as I'm a different entity in this life than the one I was in the previous life, than the one I would be in the next life. But I don't have cognizance of that. That's why it doesn't exist in the realm of my world today. It doesn't exist because I can't think of my previous birth. I can't think of my next birth. But right now, the example that we created tells me a drastic change in my life. And so I have two different worlds in this life. So even if you go backwards and look at all the small incidents in our life or lives, we would find that our world has been constantly changing. So the entity called the world is not an independent entity. It is connected with my thinking. That's all it means. And it should be easy for us to absorb that. Did that make any sense, especially because that question was raised? Apart from thoughts, there is no independent entity called the world. Just as Bhagavan has said in the very next question, if you remember question number 9, he has talked about the first person, the second person, and third person. He has talked about egoity. How the first person rises in us from the days, from our infancy. We begin to identify ourselves with our name and with our small forms at that time given to me by my parents. Your shirt, your cup, your toy, right? All those definitions are my first person, which were given unto me, implanted into me because of the habit of the mind of human generations for millions of years. We have created it for ourselves, away from the self. And we are so mired into that, we are so seeped into that, that we can't think of anything else. We are not coming out of it. If we were to come out of it, that would stop, the existence of that would diminish. And that's detachment or indifference, beginning of indifference. Any questions before we move on? Is that clear?
Well, yes. I thought of it as somewhat differently.
Go ahead.
Andrew.
Go ahead.
Yeah. What the examples you describe are rather egoistic examples, successes or failures, life story. I wasn't thinking in those terms. I was thinking in a very basic visual phenomenon. The ground and the sky. Everything that we see as illusion. Apart from thoughts, there is no world. So therefore, I was thinking about it. It's actually a meditative thing. There is no mind. There are only the thoughts. In fact, there's only one thought. At any one time, there's only one thought.
Is it?
Yeah, it could be a complex scene, a complex picture, but in fact, it is just one thought, and then that thought goes, and then there's another thought. So there is only a thought. And a scene that I see, the table I see before me, my cup of coffee, that as contrasted to some other object, they're all illusion, is what I was thinking. So it's not just a case of ego, my story, and my acceptance of a failure in my life. I think even before that, it's quite a meditative thing, because if there is no mind, then there's no person. Because if I'm attracted to a person, I imagine that there is a mind within that person, and there is no mind. So it's quite a deep thought, which I thought is worth a lot of meditation on.
Sure, it is. And I thought I did try to touch upon the gross forms of the mind and just not the subtle, they're not really subtle, they're also gross. But you said about my qualification, etc., and you're thinking about the cup and this and that, the objects around me. When you look at a mountain, that's an object. So how we define object is also dependent upon my own meditative practice. I need to move beyond this because I'm surrounded by objects around me. My socks, my shirt, my shoes, my cup, my spoon. I like this, I don't like this. I don't like it as warm. My coffee was a bit too hot. My coffee had to be a little less sweet. Or why did he put creamer in it? I don't like creamer, I like plain milk. Or I don't like plain milk, I like whatever the different forms of milk is. So my mind has so many permutation, combination, variations. All those are my limitations. All those are my egotistical definitions. And that's why when we talk about sannyas, we talk about surrender, we talk about detachment or indifference or whatever terminology we use, we are talking about removing all these attachments. Oh, by God, zillions of them. And trying to mitigate the effect of those as mine. That's why if I snatch away something from you and not to be faced by it, not to be affected by it, is my meditative practice. And this is the entire exegete of this knowledge is pointing towards us, remove yourself from this world. Kriti mahadadhav patana karanam. Why do you immerse yourself again and again in this world of activities? Don't you know that the world of activities is going to drown you deeper into the world of activities and is going to be a hindrance to your spiritual progress? And that's all we need to remember and detach and withdraw as much as we can. And not to condemn ourselves, not to say, I'm not right, I can't do it. No. We can do it. We have tremendous power within us. We all have experienced that tremendous power within us. We cannot throw it away.
Anduji?
Yes, go ahead, please.
I'd just like to share an experience I had many years ago. I'll be brief.
Sandra from New York. Go ahead, yeah.
Thank you. I was at one of my son's soccer games, and I usually sat apart from the bleachers, and I listened to mantra while I was watching the soccer game, and all of a sudden, grace descended upon me, and there was a moment, it probably wasn't even a minute, where it was no longer my son. What I saw were beings moving around, and it became a complete detachment from what I was seeing, and it just became like I had no definition of it, and all there was love. I remember that. There was just love, and it was a beautiful moment. I remember it. I don't have a lot of those, but again, it was a detachment from what I was. It was like, yes, that projector screen that was blank, and I was seeing it, but I was the blank screen. Thank you for allowing me to share.
Good. Thank you for sharing that. And that's exactly how it happens. We can't describe it properly. We don't remember how long it was. And just one last word on what we just talked about. Even the thoughts, Peter, you said there's only one thought. It would be a very sublime state of mind if one could just be with one thought. And that would also dependent upon the deepening of my meditative practice, that I can see the cascade of my thoughts. Just as the wave of the ocean is just not a wave, it's a cascade of water underneath it. Similarly is my thought. the first thought that I enunciate is a layer, a very thick layer of a lot of thoughts, which are based on my nature, which is based out of my sanskara, which is based out of my vasanas, which is my habits, which is based out of my previous activities. That I cannot control, that's my nature, and I can begin to control it when I begin to watch it. That's why Bhagavan always said, just watch the self. Just watch yourself. That's why he did not give any dictums to anybody, any rules to anybody. Not even of breathing, not even of meditating, sitting down at a particular time in a particular posture. He said, no, there is no need to do that because all those are limitations. That's why he did not put pranayama at a very high order. He says it's a very good tool. There's no denying that fact. It's an excellent crutch too, because when you control the breath, you control the mind. No denying the fact. But the moment you let go of the breath, the mind will go away. He was always trying to bring us to the ultimate way of getting to the self. So there is no one thought. Actually, I wish we had only one thought. That would be very nice. So to be able to see that my thoughts are layered, especially when I'm in complicated situation or I have a family gathering and things are not going the way I wanted, or my mind is going. Look at the multifarious activity of the mind at that time. And
well, for example, if I see a snake on the road, there's an instant thought there.
There's an instant thought of what?
A snake on the road.
And a rope also? Do you think of a rope?
No, I'm not. I don't mean that. I'm not referring to that.
Right. Okay.
I'm just talking about, it could be any, or just a thought of a memory or something like that. As soon as I have that thought, then that leads to another associated thought, to another associated thought, and I construct a little story. But at any one moment, at any one nanosecond, there is just one thought.
Sure. That's good. Question number 10. How will the mind become quiescent? By the inquiry, who am I? That's the answer. That's it. By the inquiry, who am I? The thought, who am I, will destroy all of the thoughts, and like the stick used to stirring the burning fire, it'll itself in end get destroyed. Then there will arise self-realization. Especially answers like this are very deep. Bhagavan has given a very subtle hint here. By inquiry, who am I? The thought, by inquiry, who am I? The mind will become quiescent. The thought, who am I, will destroy all of the thoughts. And like the stick used for stirring the burning fire. Now that's very deep. He's not just talking about, he's talking about, we'll come back to that in a moment. Stirring the burning fire, it will itself in the end get destroyed. Then there will arise self-realization. The only thing I wanted to refer to was burning of like the stick used to stirring the burning fire. There's a deeper meaning there. And I was trying to look, while you all were meditating, I wasn't meditating. I was looking for a document I can't find. It's a quote by a Korean monk, Chong Chol, about the stick. He says to his devotees, no doubt all his quotes, these three quotes that I have that I keep repeating often, are for the mumukshus, the ones who are on a monastic path, who are doggedly trying to get to the ego. And he says you should be like a stick that even a wood burner picks up and throws it back, saying it's not good enough to be burnt. You should be like a stick that is so withered and so bad that looking at it, people say, what a dirty stick of wood. And I couldn't find that word. I wish I can. And he says, when you become that piece of wood, that nobody even wants to touch, and then you have touched yourself. So this is how deep this all is about. It's about dropping all my definitions and living with it. Being besieged by things I do not like is a very good place to be at. Other people creating non-congenial environment for me is a blessing for me. Any kind of emotional, physical, mental, unfortunately mental we cannot decipher, but emotional and physical affliction is a big blessing for me, because it brings me closer to detach myself and begin to see my body as Bhagwan in his experience in Madurai in August of 1896, when he could visualize his body being taken for burial or cremation, whatever you want to call it. He could see that he is not the body. That's how the realization came up to him. And all these difficult situations are that message from the ultimate reality to this individual soul that, hey, I'm calling you. This is the only way, otherwise we cannot be. We will be completely surrounded by our definitions, howsoever small or big they may be. And we got to drop them. Any questions on talk number 12? Was it 12 or was it 10? It was 10. And 12, would somebody volunteer to read number 12?
Hi, Bandhu.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead. Very happy to see you. He's traveling abroad and still logged in. That's Venkata from Virginia, but currently abroad in a different country. Go ahead, Venkata.
Bandhu, thank you so much. I was struggling with the connectivity for the last several minutes. That's why I lost a precious few minutes. Anyway, my dad is also listening. His name is Anjaneyulu.
Oh, wow. Give my regards to him, please. Yeah.
You can hear?
Yes, he can hear you.
Show me.
He can hear you.
Nice hearing you,
Bandhu.
Namaskar, Venkata's father. Nice hearing your voice. Thank you.
kind of you.
Welcome. Yeah.
Okay, so my question is, it's very intense what you just said, but being a beginner, maybe I'm not getting the whole gist of it, but I'm catching on slowly, very like a small piece. The thing is, you said when people have difficulties, it's a good thing in life, either emotional problems, mental problems, whatever kind of problem. Basically, God is saying, I'm calling you, or they are trying to connect with you. Can you expand a little bit on that? I'm a little, that's all.
Yeah, Bhagwan used to say to people, when a question was asked one time, I'm trying to recall the question, exact wordings. I can't recall the exact wordings. The question was, how come, Bhagwan, I cannot stay in touch with this reality that you talk about, the self that you talk about? I'm in and out, in and out. So the question was to this extent, that how can I not continuously stay connected, and why do I miss it? And Bhagwan said, in one of these answers, no doubt he gave very, very similar answers or different answers at different times to different people or similar question. But in this particular instance, Bhagwan said, just as the radio frequency has to be tuned in to catch the radio station you want to listen to. We are talking of the olden days when you had to dial and things like that. You have to be tuned in. So when I'm thrown a difficulty at me, it is the call from a higher power to say you are too seeped into your world. I want you to come backwards. Going backwards is the real answer, is the real win. So when I lose something, I'm actually winning. That's why the Vedantic scriptures and every scripture of every religion says, you don't know how good this is for you There's something good in it for you, right? We all have heard that, whether you're a Judaist or whether you are a Zoroastrian or whether you are a Christian or a Hindu or a Sikh or a Muslim, doesn't matter. All religions have said that. There's something good in it for you. There must be something good in it for you. And that's exactly what it is. So Venkata, when things are difficult, you and I spoke one-on-one about something you may recall. A difficulty in life is to be embraced, because that's what gives me purity of my layered personality. My personality is layered with lots of definitions from my previous cascades of births. So any difficulty brings me closer to that entity. That is sans, that is without. Sans meaning without any definitions about me. That's why I'm supposed to be naked of my definitions, naked of my possessions, naked of my all pride. I'm so egotistical that every day I can be insulted. Most people are insulted every day by something or the other. And that's what it means, Venkata, to answer your question. And Bandhu is nobody to answer it. That's why I took Bhagwan's talk. Bhagwan said, you have to be tuned in. Unless we are tuned in, we can't receive it. And these difficulties are a reminder from the radio station that, oh, you're not catching the station properly. Catch it properly, tune a little bit more, stay with that. So any difficulty should be looked at as an opportunity for my own purification and for my own progress, furtherance in my journey towards understanding myself. And I know it's a difficult concept. I remember when I used to live in the ashram and somebody would start asking questions and I would say, I wish we can get to a stage where somebody walks in. And we had lots of IT young guys coming into the ashram. Working for Infosys or working for all large companies, McKinsey's and, the world's top companies. These younger guys are coming here and they would come and say, Bandhuji, I got promoted further. Now I've become vice president so-and-so, CTO so-and-so. And I used to joke with them a little bit later on, I would say, I wish a day comes when you come in and tell me you got promoted, and I tell him, and that I can tell you, I'm very sorry to hear about that. You come and tell me I lost my job. I say, congratulations, buddy. Very nice. Good news. I wish we can all reach that maturity. But if I were to do that, you'll say Bandhu is a lousy fella and you will stop coming to the ashram. Bandhu may also feel hurt because if you call him a lousy fella, he has also an ego. But I'll be more worried about you not coming to Bhagwan's ashram. So are you getting the point? Am I making any sense, folks?
Yeah, Bandhu, you are making sense. But to your point that, say, when somebody is insulting or correcting time and again because they love the father so much, they're correcting, and the father says, you corrected me 20 times today. I'm feeling very embarrassed. How to embrace that? This is a live example I'm asking you, not illusionary.
Good. Okay, that's a two-sided thing. If a parent, and this happens a lot when the parent really becomes old, they become dependent on us, the younger generation begins to criticize them. So the first onus lies on the younger generation to withdraw from that criticism, because you are what you are because of what your parents gave you. Especially if you had a loving relationship. I'm not talking about difficult relationship, but the first responsibility lies with the offspring, not to criticize or condemn, rather facilitate with whatever limitation they have without reminding them about their limitation. The second responsibility is on the parent, who has to not feel insulted, but the parent has to have a grounding and a grooming and a maturity and a depth to be able to not think as a pushback or as a put down to them. But that's, we're talking about Venkata and Bandhu, with due respect to your father who's sitting next to you. I don't expect your father to do that. I don't know what his spiritual richness is, but I know Venkata. So Venkata, the onus lies on you as a son, not to criticize. You can still do what you are doing, and you're still doing what you're doing for him. I know that. So just do it and don't enunciate those critical words. That make that as your meditative practice, that I'm not going to say, no matter what he does or says, I'm not going to correct him. I'm going to try and be around him to facilitate whatever he needs. That's my responsibility. I got to swallow it.
Even if he is, though he's still a successful lawyer, but in a social environment, he says something and we are worried that he may be laughed at. And time and again, correcting him 12 times, he is not able to take the feedback. So I think we should withdraw and let him be. After 87 years, nobody is going to correct himself, I think.
Plus all definitions of him being a lawyer, a successful lawyer, or what would the society say, is all my egotistical definitions of that. I must look right in every situation. That's all. That's what we end up doing every day. We want to sound pleasant. We want to look good. We want to fit into the equation. We want to be the perfect piece of the puzzle in every situation. And a little aberration, we immediately the ego kicks in and protects myself, and I give an excuse to say, this is why I said it. Or I didn't mean it. My intent wasn't this. All those are egotistical statements. So even being worried about him or what people would think is my ego, and I should only look at my ego. And Venkata, it's a slow process, so it happens slowly and ever so slowly.
So the only way to tame your ego is to pray inwards and to pray to a guru, Ishta Devata, right?
Absolutely. Every day, every moment of our life, if you keep catching our ego, even when you're alone, your mind is talking to you, the gibberish is going on. The garrulousness of the mind continues to go on, and to check it, to stop it, to talk to ourselves and say, I'm not going to think like that. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to act on that thought. I'm going to drop that thought and be reposed in that. Stay there, It's a daily practice.
Beautiful, so beautiful,
daily
so
practice.
beautiful,
Daily
so beautiful.
practice. Thank you for
Thank
asking.
you, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you,
question
Bandhu.
number 12, we may not have time to go over question number 12. It's a long answer. Did we go over that?
No, we didn't.
No, we didn't. So where was that where it said mind, the world is not apart from the mind? We did do 12 yet, right? Yeah, we did do 12. So I'll read it. If there's any question, then we'll come back to it next week, or we can stay longer. Can somebody volunteer to read, please? Are there no other means for making the mind quiescent?
I can do that, Bandhu.
Please, go ahead.
Okay. Other than inquiry, there are no adequate means. Your picture is coming. Okay. The top line is, are there no other means for making the mind quiet? So other than inquiry, there are no adequate means. If through other means it is sought to control the mind will appear to be controlled, but will again go forth. Through the control of breath also, the mind will become quiet, but it will be quiet only so long as the breath remains controlled. And when the breath resumes, the mind also will again start moving and will wander as impelled by residual impressions. The source is the same for both mind and breath. Thought indeed is the nature of the mind. The thought, I, is the first thought of the mind, and that is egoity. Thank you, Sandra. Thank you. That is, where am I? That is egoity. Okay, hold on. Okay. It is from that whence egoity originates that breath also originates. Therefore, when the mind becomes quiet, the breath is controlled. And when the breath is controlled, the mind becomes quiet. But in deep sleep, although the mind becomes quiet, the breath does not stop. This is because of the will of God, so that the body may be preserved and other people may not be under the impression that it is dead. In the state of waking and in samadhi, when the mind becomes quiet, the breath is controlled. Breath is the gross form of, mind. Till the time of death, the mind keeps breath in the body. And when the body dies, the mind takes the breath along with it. Therefore, the exercise of breath control is only an aid for rendering the mind quiet. Manonigraha. It will not destroy the mind. Manonasa. Like the practice of breath control, meditation of the forms of God, repetition of mantras, restriction on food, etc., are but aids for rendering the mind quiet.
Sandra, can you pull it up a little bit? Yeah, there we go.
Through the meditation of the forms of God and through repetition of mantras, the mind becomes one-pointed. The mind will always be wandering. Just as when a chain is given to an elephant to hold in its trunk, it will go along grasping the chain and nothing else. So also, when the mind is occupied with a name or form, it will grasp that alone. When the mind expands in the form of countless thoughts, each thought becomes weak. But as thoughts get resolved, the mind becomes one-pointed and strong. For such a mind, self-inquiry will become easy. Of all the restrictive rules, that relating to the taking of sattvic food in moderate quantities is the best. By observing this rule, the sattvic quality of mind will increase, and that will be helpful to self-inquiry.
Thank you, Venkata.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you.
So here are a couple of key fact points here. The mind controlled by the control of breath, the mind becomes quiescent. The source of the breath and mind is the same. Shakayordvai Shakti Mulaka is the verse in Updesaram, where Bhagavan says they both emanate from the same source, the same power, called Shakti. Mind and breath emanates from the same source. That's why they go hand in hand. And when the breath is quieter, the mind is quieter. So when we are sleeping, we are quieter. Mind is, because the breathing has slowed down and the mind is quieter. But the mind is active until we are in dream state. And when we go into deep sleep mode, the mind is absolutely quiescent. And that's when we merge temporarily, momentarily, with the self every night. We don't know about it because our nature has been layered with other worldly things. So the moment we come out of it, our world begins. The cobweb begins the moment we wake up. We begin to emanate just like a spider. My world. Further on, Bhagavan goes on to say, the exercise of breath control is only an aid for rendering the mind quiescent. Mano nigraha. It kinda controls the mind, mano nigraha. It will not destroy the mind. It will not annihilate the mind. It will not. Bhagwan has said in one of the verses, Vayurodhana daliyate mana jalapakshivad drodha sadhanam. That as long as you have controlled the breath, your mind will be quiescent. The moment you let go of the breath, the ego will rise again, just as a bird let out of a cage will flutter away, fly away. So that's why pranayama was not considered by Raman Maharshi to be the ultimate goal. It is a good tool. All these are good tools, meditation, etc. But the annihilation of the mind will only come by constantly focusing on who am I, where do my egotistical emanations come from, where do they rise from, why do I keep correcting other people, why do I want other people to be fitting into the framework I have. I have a design. I think this is a perfect rectangle, and I want everybody to fit in properly there. That's my ego. And I should let them be as they are. Tall order. Everything is a tall order. There's no simple task here. And yet we are already that. So if you can leave all this and be with the self, Summaira, then we will realize, as Bhagwan used to say, why aren't you realized here and now? And that can come to us with our maturity of practicing this again and again, every day, every day, every day. Go back to your meditative when you're meditating. Think of all the situations you didn't like. Whether it be an illness, whether it be loss of money, loss of reputation, being fired from a job, going through a divorce, losing a child or losing a parent. And when you felt you were too attached to something you couldn't live without, and you still are living without it. Think, who was it? And those moments, if you can bring back into your mind, embrace them as good moments. Say, that was good time actually. See what a tremendous leap of faith will emerge in the heart.
I just wanted to share the, I know Gandhi loved Ramana so much, and Gandhi used to have the Sermon on the Mount. He read it every day. So when the question came up about, what blessed are the poor in spirit, when we're emptied, when we're humbled, we are open to the truth of what we really are. Summa Yara.
Yes, thank you. I didn't get one word. What you said? Who used to go to the Mount?
Gandhi used to read the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus, and the first teaching is, "Blessed are the poor in spirit; they will enter the kingdom." And that is what this is. I thought that this inquiry is all about. It's about the great Ramana pointing the simplicity of this. There's no faster, directer way. So this is the teachings of all of the great avatars, the deepest teaching.
That is so true. That is so true. Thank you, Francis, for sharing that. Ramiro.
Arunachala.
Arunachala. I've known Ramiro for many, many years.
Have a nice day.
Ramiro is a Colombian with an Indian soul. He's been going to India for 30 years and has been there for many, many times. And once we went to Rishikesh together, Ramiro and I.
Have a nice day, everybody.
Yes, Ramiro. Feel better. We'll talk again on the phone.
Okay, good.
Arunachala. Ramiro, bye-bye. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Bandiji. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, Shweta, thank you. No, and our world does not get removed from us overnight. So when I have something and I'm attached to it, I should practice detachment from it. I shouldn't think of removing. I shouldn't do anything forcibly. Nothing to be done forcibly. Suppose, like, I'll tell you a good example of a devotee who started living with Bhagwan in 1940s. He lived there very, very successful lawyer. Since Venkata talked about his father being a lawyer, I'm trying to recall his name. It'll come to me in a moment. Devraj Mudaliar, and he was a non-vegetarian, as most of the Indians are non-vegetarians, even in South India. And he was a non-vegetarian, and he started living there. And the thought of sattvic food continued to besiege him. And he tried to convert himself, and he could not. And after some time, he complained to Bhagavan that I can't handle this vegetarian dish every day. All meals are vegetarian. I have to have some meat. Bhagavan obviously didn't respond anything. And the point I'm trying to make is that he then went back to non-vegetarianism, and then at the right time, it came from within him that he's going to not eat any non-vegetarian food. He's not going to have a dead animal on his plate anymore. And then he stopped and became a vegetarian. So it'll come from within. If we begin to meditate upon it, then the guru or our own self will help us come to that stage. We have to come to that stage of maturity when it manifests itself as a practice. You see the subtle difference here. It doesn't go away, but we can begin to practice our detachment from it, especially from money, reputation. My jealousy is a very big weakness. My anger, my sensuality, and everything that surrounds me, I can practice, bring it as a meditative thing. Thank you. Arunachala.
Namaskar, Arunachala.
Arunachala. Arunachala.